Do you suspect that you might be both ADHD and autistic, or maybe you've been diagnosed with one, but something about that explanation has never fully fit? Perhaps you're wondering if it's even worth getting diagnosed as an adult. After all, you've made it this long. Does it really matter? Well, it depends on what you're hoping diagnosis will do for you. So today we're going to talk about what diagnosis can actually offer, where it often falls short, and why the concept of diagnosis polarizes the AuDHD community. Growing up, you didn't have the words to explain your experiences. While that didn't make them any less real, it did make them easier to dismiss. You may have told yourself you were making a big deal out of nothing, or that everyone struggles sometimes, right? When you looked for answers, you were handed explanations that never quite fit, like anxiety, depression, or trauma. And if you kept asking questions, you risked being seen as dramatic, especially when, from the outside, you seem to be doing okay. Over time, that pattern taught you something. You stopped trusting yourself, even when you doubted other people's explanations. And then something happened. Maybe your chronic burnout became so extreme that living without answers was no longer an option. Or maybe you came across a video or article and saw yourself in it. Whatever it was, you found autism and ADHD, and suddenly your life came into focus. But even if that explanation fits, it doesn't undo years of self-doubt. You worry, you're reading into things. After everything you've endured, you're afraid of being told you're wrong again. So now you have a choice. Do you pursue diagnosis, or is self-identification enough? For many of us, it comes down to validation. After a lifetime of being dismissed, there's something powerful about finally hearing it from someone else. You weren't overthinking it. You weren't being dramatic. There was a reason for all of it. And once someone names that reason, it becomes much harder to keep blaming yourself for things that were never a personal failure. And that's what gives you permission to finally move forward. Now, aside from peace of mind, there's also a practical benefit. With ADHD specifically, diagnosis provides access to medication. For some, medication can be genuinely transformative. Focus improves and task initiation becomes easier. Things that felt impossible start to feel manageable. However, medication isn't for everyone. Some prefer a holistic approach, while others don't respond to it well. It's also important to understand that medication is a tool. While it might improve your ability to build systems that help, it doesn't build them for you or guarantee success. And while diagnosis can provide validation and access to medication, there are other expectations that often go unmet. You might believe that once you're diagnosed, the people in your life will finally get it, that giving them context will make something click, that they'll stop taking your behaviors personally, adjust their expectations, and meet you where you are. Some will, but most won't. Often, they only saw what made it to the surface. From their perspective, you were a little quirky or chaotic, but you seem to be doing okay, generally. They might not understand why you suddenly need to name something that you appeared to handle before. Some will get defensive, as if your diagnosis is an accusation, like you're implying they should have noticed sooner or done something differently. Others will be dismissive. They'll tell you everyone's a little ADHD, or that everyone claims to be autistic nowadays, right? They'll say you seem fine and that you just need to try a little harder. Either way, you can end up managing their feelings instead of them supporting yours. Even the people who genuinely try to understand probably won't see it the way you do. For you, this isn't a condition. It's your identity. It's the lens through which you've experienced your entire life, even before you had words for it. For them, it's something you have, not something you are. They won't fully grasp how profound this shift feels or why it matters so much. And if you pursue diagnosis hoping it will change how people see you or treat you, you may find that very little changes. You'll still be explaining yourself, still be advocating, and still be running into the same misunderstandings you always have. Diagnosis also won't automatically make navigating the world easier. Yes, self-knowledge is valuable as it gives you language to describe what you need and the clarity to set boundaries. That matters. However, disclosing your diagnosis doesn't guarantee that people will accommodate you or even take you seriously. When you tell someone you're autistic or have ADHD, they filter it through whatever reference point they have. Maybe it's a coworker, or a nephew, or a character from a movie. And suddenly, that becomes the lens they see you through. They're not equipped to understand how different this can look from person to person, and most won't ask the questions that would help them learn. Instead, they have their one example, and now you're assumed to fall squarely in that box too. Here's what often works better. Instead of disclosing and hoping they understand, state what you need directly. I work best with written instructions, or I need a few minutes to process before I respond, or maybe busy environments make it hard for me to focus. You don't have to explain why. You don't have to name autism or ADHD. You just need to know yourself well enough to ask for what helps. And that self-knowledge, it doesn't require a formal diagnosis. It comes from paying attention to your own patterns, learning what works and what doesn't, and giving yourself permission to take your needs seriously. Then there's the reality of the diagnostic process itself. Depending on where you live, you could be on a wait list for months or even years. An autism assessment can be prohibitively expensive. This means some people can't pursue diagnosis at all. And after all the waiting and expense, you might still be dismissed because you've learned to mask or because hitting certain milestones makes clinicians assume you don't need support. But for many in the community, the issue isn't just that the process is difficult, it's whether the process should be required at all. It's strange when you think about it, going to a doctor to confirm something that has always been part of you. You were autistic and ADHD long before you knew it. You were born this way. Diagnosis doesn't make you neurodivergent. It confirms what was already true. So, do you really need a medical professional's permission to make it real? Many would say no. Why hand that authority to a system that spent years ignoring or dismissing what you were experiencing? Now, for some, the word diagnosis is part of the problem. It implies disorder, that something is broken and needs fixing. But autism and ADHD aren't illnesses. They describe how your brain has always functioned. And yes, it can absolutely be disabling. That's real and valid. But for many of us, our neurodivergence is also part of our identity. It's shaped how we see the world, how we relate to others, and how we've moved through our lives. Now, some believe that you shouldn't call yourself autistic or ADHD without a formal diagnosis, that you are not qualified to make that call, that self-identification undermines those who went through the process. But that position assumes you lack the self-awareness to recognize your own experience. But to be clear, what we're talking about here isn't subtle. It's relentless friction that's followed you for decades across every aspect of your life. When you educate yourself and finally see yourself for the first time, that recognition isn't casual, it's visceral. That shouldn't be invalidated simply because you couldn't access or afford the process. And for those worried about people claiming identities that don't fit, yes, that happens, but when someone has done the research, seen themselves in the experiences, and keeps showing up despite the stigma, they're not borrowing a label for convenience. The people who stay aren't the ones getting it wrong. The biggest shift doesn't come from diagnosis itself. It comes from finally allowing yourself to take your own experience seriously. Whether that happens through formal diagnosis or through self-understanding, it often marks the start of a new chapter. You start putting your past into context, you look at relationships differently, and you reevaluate the expectations you've been holding yourself to. You learn what actually works for you, what doesn't, and where you need boundaries to protect your energy. If diagnosis helps you feel confident taking that step, it can be worth it. And if you're already there without it, that's valid too. If this resonated, please consider becoming part of the AuDHD Hub community on Patreon. There are free resources and community spaces and paid options if you want additional support. The link is in the description down below. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you next time.